Thanks, man. Well, good morning, everybody. Great. I appreciate y'all coming out. I think this is my fourth at DakotaCon. Before I start, I wanted to show, I don't know if you've seen the video yet, but we made a video today for, today's April 1st, right? So obviously April Fools, right? So this is a fake video, but we made a video on something, and I wanted to show it real quick because it's pretty funny. And so the thing for me is that my whole mentality has always been trying to do the right thing for the security industry, right? And to get things and make things better, as a lot of us have. And there's a lot of things happening in the industry right now where there's a lot of marketing, a lot of FUD, a lot of other things that are happening. At TrustedSec, we have created the #1 product out there that we have right now. We call it the hacker vaccine. This technology has been the past 2 years. People ask, how does the hacker vaccine work? How can you stop 100% of the attackers out there? That's a good question. You know, when we were sitting there trying to figure out exactly how to stop hackers in the tracks, we knew that the only way possible was to develop sophisticated artificial intelligence that goes through your entire network and completely shuts down all the computers in your environment so that people can't use their computers for hackers to break into it. This revolutionary concept of patent pending will shut down all of your environments, all of your users, so they can no longer work. What's great about Enforcer is not only does it track the attackers where they came, techniques. It's enforcing time. Our enforcer module literally sends somebody to somebody's house, beats them up, and make sure that they don't ever do it again. This is our guarantee 100% they will never touch your computer system, regardless of where. So if you're interested in the hacker vaccine, we're starting our prices at $3,000. And you know, post. We had some funny things with it, but it's fun to kind of poke fun at some of the things in the industry. So a little bit about my background, and I'll talk a little about this kind of my history, but I'm Dave Kennedy. I'm the CEO of TrustedSec and founder of TrustedSec and Binary Defense, which are two companies that I actively run now. And so I'll talk a little about that, but I started off my career as a Marine, and so I spent a lot of time in the Middle East and a lot of areas. Kind of from there, one of the different things that we're finding out there. It's a global issue, which is really interesting, and it hits every single industry vertical, which is unique to our industry and IT in general. It means that as a security person, I can find a job in manufacturing, I can find a job in financial, I can find a job in healthcare. And there's no real threshold for us not to find jobs in certain areas. And this industry is growing so fast now that there's not enough talent for us to be able to support the current trends that we see today. And so if you look at that as a whole, you're in a very unique type of industry, and there's a lot of great things happening in this industry to make things better. So if you look at just hacking in general and just looking at the security industry in general, there's a lot of things that we're doing that really make a difference around the globe and what we're trying to do to combat those. And so what's interesting is when I left being a chief security officer and starting TrustedSec, I had no idea how that was going to actually go. And the industry itself has just boomed so fast and so big in a lot of areas that if you do the right things, you'll make a difference. And I'll talk a little about that. I don't know if anybody's seen this, but this is a little interview that for Binary Defense that we did around our offices and what we do and kind of how we do it. But if you're interested in getting to the field, this is one of the videos that we did to kind of show this. So I wanted to show this really quick.
Not just all about computer hacking. There's a lot of ways that you can get into a corporation.
I think it's a little out of sync with
there
the
are
audio
apps
and
you can
everything,
download on this phone that allow you to spoof your phone number, call up tech support from that company's number, and say, hey, I'm Bob in HR, I need help, I can't get to this website. The IT person trying to be helpful will go to a website, click a link, and it actually hacks their computer and takes full control of it. So it's not just all about the computer hacking skills, it's also about how you communicate. Hi, I'm Dave Kennedy. I'm the founder and chief technology officer of Binary Defense Systems. Binary Defense Systems is a company that focuses at...
Whenever you have a security operations center, you have to have what's called a pew-pew map. It's a map that has, like threats and that you're looking like you're actually doing something that does absolutely nothing. So you got to make sure you have those, just so you know.
Looking at how hackers get into corporations. And we're a 24/7, 365 company that looks at the different types of attacks that are happening, and we try to defend against hackers going into big corporations and financial systems, banks, manufacturing companies, folks that make the energy that we deal with on a regular basis. Over here is what we're actually monitoring as far as what we consider assets. These are machines that we're actively monitoring at a given time. And what happens here is we're actually tracking different groups and threats throughout the world. So you can actually see over this diagram the different attackers that we are actively monitoring at a given time. Yeah, so I'm an ethical hacker. My focus is making sure that companies understand what the risks are and how they can best defend against it. Part of that is the monitoring piece. You're looking for what hackers are doing, but also understanding what their exposures are. And I get to be a hacker for life. I go into companies, I hack into computer systems, I steal money, I steal credit cards, I steal people's social security numbers.
So, hacker for life, that's right. No, what's interesting is when I started off, I had no idea that there was going to be a security industry. And so, as a kid, when I was in high school, I was overweight, a non-popular kid that liked to play video games, and that was kind of my thing. And back in my time, I guess, and it's weird saying my time because I still feel like I'm young, but we didn't have really graphical games like we have today, right? We had these things called MUDs. They're called multi-user dimensions, and they were text-based games that you would literally type kill somebody, or bash somebody, or go north, and you actually type north, right? And so there's no mouse and stuff that you use to do all of this, right? You're actually typing all of this stuff, right? And so I started off with MUDs, and that's actually how I started to learn a little bit of programming. I started to build my own MUD and started to learn a little bit of C, C++, to actually build this MUD. And it was funny because I remember my dad, he would go to work every day at 8:30. My bus would come and pick me up at 8. So what I would do is I would hide in the woods from 8 to 8:30 until I see his car drive by, and then I'd go back in my house and play video games all day, right? And I'd skip school. And then, I didn't really excel very well at school, which was interesting. Oh yeah, role model. Sorry. I'll tell you a funny story about that in a second. But I never really enjoyed school because it didn't really focused on what I wanted to do as a person, which was more in the technology side. And it's funny because I literally almost failed out of high school. I got D's and F's and C's, and I had to take summer school just to graduate. And so what's funny is I got nominated and accepted for, I graduated from a school called Bedford High School. I got nominated and accepted into their Hall of Fame. And so what was interesting when you get accepted into Hall of Fame is they ask you all these questions, like, hey, what was your GPA? I'm like, no comment, you know, like, hey, what sports did you play? No comment, you know, like, I didn't play any sports. You know, what was your favorite thing at school? I didn't really go to school, so I don't know, what do you put, right? You know, and then you're like, well, hey, what other things did you do as far as like extracurricular activities in school? Like, were you part of the band? I'm like, nope, none of that, none of that, none of that. And so I didn't think I was going to get accepted, and I did. But it goes to show you that, school is one thing, and you definitely should be focusing on it. But focus on your interests and what you enjoy to do. And afterwards, I went through college and finished everything else. But the beginning for me was a bit rough because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to do technology. I just wanted to do something in IT. I didn't know what that was. And I enjoyed the hacking stuff. I remember I was trying to find some source code for a MUD on IRC from a while. And some guy gave me an EXE, and I downloaded it and installed it, and it was a sub-7 Trojan, and that was the first time I ever got hacked on my Windows 98 machine or whatever. So all these things that you start to learn as a kid kind of growing up and sort of look at that field. And so then I decided to join the military. And it was interesting. My story about going into the Marines was weird because I knew I just didn't like school. Like, I didn't want to go to college, and that wasn't for me. But getting into a job or whatever, I didn't know what that meant. So I'm like, well, I'll just go and join the military and see what happens from there. And I literally was about to sign on the dotted line to join the Army. And so I'm in the recruiting station to go and join the Army. And the Army recruiters are just complaining about how they hate their day-to-day job and all this other stuff. And it's not a rag on the Army, it's just the individual recruiters that were there with me. And they're just kind of like, hey, man, this really sucks and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, why would I want to sign up for this? And so I'm like thinking, second-guessing myself on whether or not I even want to join the military. And I see these 3 Marines, walking in with like their dress blues, and they're all like, ripped and everything. And I'm, an overweight kid and all this other stuff. And I start walking through, I'm like, wow, I want to be those guys, right? And so I went and I joined the Marines and started and shipped out to boot camp and all that good stuff. Shortly after getting into the Marines, I deployed to Bahrain, and we spent a lot of time there. I did a lot of intelligence work, so a lot of things that helped combat a lot of the terrorist threats that we saw, especially during like Operation Enduring Freedom during this specific time. But I got to learn a lot on the tech side. What was interesting is I did a lot of everything. I did IT work like being a sysadmin. So I got a good foundation of networking and everything else that was out there. And then shortly after I got back from here, I got brought into a group called the Computer Network Operations Team, which was more of their early form of their hacking team that they had in the military. And I started to learn a little bit more on the offensive side, and because I had a little bit of security knack, I was able to actually go and do that. I'm not the one bending over. I'm actually right here. That's me, with hair, right? With hair. It's amazing. I miss my hair more than anything. But it was funny because, our mentality, was especially in Intel, is like the exact opposite of the Marine Corps. So like we grow our hair out, we wouldn't be like the traditional Marines that you would typically see. And we're always like considered like the pirates of the group over there. But shortly after I got back, I then again deployed to Iraq. And I spent a lot of time over there. This is, we were one of the first Marine units into Iraq, or as the actual war was going on, which was interesting. We were attached to an Army unit at the time and some Brits. And we went in and the Green Zone, I think it's now called the Green Zone, where like Saddam Hussein and all that other stuff was. But I went to go and I actually got to see a lot of things over there. But while I was over there, I was doing a lot of forensics work. So I got a lot of good forensics experience, like looking at hard drives and things like that and doing analysis of those. And so I started to get a little bit more on the forensic side of things. And then once I deployed a second time, and I was focusing more on wireless collection and actually hacking into signals and things like that. So I got a good broad set of experience while I was over there kind of understanding things. And that's, for me was really helpful. The military in general was extremely helpful for me because it gave me a foundation of networking, gave me a foundation of offensive, wireless, protocols, all those things that you really need to kind of build yourself off of. And so once I got out of here, I decided it was time to go into the private sector and get out of the military. And so I did 5 years in the Marines. And then I decided to join a company in Cleveland in consulting. And consulting is an interesting one because it really burns you out very quickly, but you learn an insane amount of information. So consulting, you're getting shipped out all the time. You're going to different customers. You're flying by the seat of your pants. You're doing all of this work. And at the same time, you're learning more and more because everything that you're touching is completely new and unique. Every organization that you go to is completely different than the one you just did in the past. Every attack vector, well, maybe not every attack vector, but a lot of the attack vectors, you have to learn different things to actually go and do. And so while this was a very good learning time of where I was at, the company I was with wasn't so good as far as where I came from and kind of the ethics behind it and everything else. So I didn't have a good time with that, but it gave me so much experience that it was more than invaluable to what I was actually able to accomplish. And so during this time was interesting. It was the first time that I ever presented in front of public, and it was at a local security conference in Cleveland. And I remember it was like I had no idea what I was doing. I was just a young kid out of the military, and it was like a kind of more of like a corporate-y type event, like a hey CISOs and stuff like that, right? And this is I think in like 2005. And my whole talk was like on packet injection, wireless, and cracking weapon WPA or something like that, right? And it was all technical, and people are like, "Whoa, what is this guy talking about?" And so that was kind of my first lesson of actually presenting. And then shortly after that, I presented at DEFCON, which was one of the highlights of my life from that side. Then I presented at ShmooCon, which is another highlight of my life, in actually presenting at and doing those things. And what was interesting in the consulting front is there's a guy named Matty Arhoni, Mutz. He runs offensive security, Kali Linux and all that other stuff, right? And I was in an IRC chat room with Mutz, and Mutz was like, hey, I was talking to Mutz, and I was like, hey, Mutz, if you had to pick one programming language and if you wanted to kind of advance your skills, what would you do? And Mutz is like, hey, I recommend you pick up Python. So Mutz told me to pick up Python. I started picking up Python. And that day is when I started writing a tool called Fast Track. And it was the first program I'd really ever written in my life. And Mutz is like, just think of an idea and go and do it. And so I started writing this tool. I had no idea how to write it. And the first, actually all the iterations were horrible. But the code was like literally try accept blocks. And it was like, hey, if this doesn't work, then just accept the error and then keep going on, right? And then just break, it's horrible, right? And I've actually literally been trying to like remove the code from the internet, and then I actually rewrote it into set so that it actually looked decent with proper functions and things like that, right? There was not a single function in that entire application. It literally was like 6,000 lines of try accept blocks, and it was one file, right? So, anyways, it was bad. But that was my first program, that I ever wrote, and that was something that I was able to go and present at DEFCON on. And the first time I presented at DEFCON, what happened? All my demos didn't work, right? Every single one of them failed, right? It's horrible, the worst experience ever. And I actually black out, and I don't even think about that one anymore because it was so bad. But you pick yourself up, and you move on, and you do a good job at another time. And I did the same thing, and I attempted the demo guides at ShmooCon, and it was highly successful. So the consulting front for me was probably the start of my real career, I guess, in the security industry, because I was able to kind of get out there and start to talk and share things that I was doing. And that's really important for you in this industry right now, is that there's so many different angles that you can focus on and learn, that finding that skill set that you're good at and sharing your knowledge and sharing your information is what this community is all about. And so going into this field and going into the consulting side in the private sector, when I was able to write things like Fast Track, it helped people. People were actually using it to go in and hack, and people were doing things, and I was writing white papers and doing all these other things. And so it was something that I really enjoyed. Now, as part of this phase for me, when I started doing consulting, is I networked with a lot of people. I became good friends with a lot of folks. And so after about, I think I was there for probably about 5 years, I decided it was time to go and take the next step. And one important thing about being in this industry is communication. If you can't communicate, you can't talk, it's very difficult to exceeding and kind of move forward. And so you can be very technical, be as technical as you want to, but you have to have the communication skills. And so I decided to leave and join a company called Diebold as the chief security officer. And it was interesting because Diebold is a 22,000 employee company, and at the time I was the youngest VP in Diebold history to actually join the company itself. And so I decided to actually go and build a program there, and I'd never done that before. It's not something that I was used to. I was mostly more on the offensive side. It was funny, the first few weeks that I was working there, I want to learn the network and understand everything. And it's funny because they had a dashboard at their ITIL meeting, which is the IT change control meeting that they had. And one of those that the security team was providing at the time was the top threats in the company. And so it had me as the top threat for like the next 2 years after that, on the top of the billboard. So I was hacking into everything and stealing all the stuff. But what was nice about being there is that I was able to figure out how to build a good program. I started off with about 3 people on my team, and that quickly went to about 64 people, I think, at the end of the day is when I ended up leaving. And the best part about that was the communication pieces and the communication skills that I learned from that. But what's funny about what you do, and I'll talk a little about this at the latter part of my slides, is that when you go to a certain place and they have a specific culture, that doesn't mean that you have to adhere to that culture. When I went to Diebold is a very old company, right? 150 years or whatever. Ties and suit coats and all this other stuff, right? When I came there, I shook all that up. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I wasn't allowed to, it was against HR or whatever, and I still did it. And we had, Nerf gun wars and things that were completely unheard of at that company. But it quickly changed the culture there, especially in our area and in the IT folks, to be more relaxed and to kind of understand how to work together and to really come together as a team. And so I really changed the culture there in a lot of cases for the better. And I got owned at the same time. I remember Eric. Where's Eric at? Right here, yeah. So I hired Lares when I was at Diebold, and one of the best times that I remember being there is they come in and they're like, I'd done all this physical security work, and we have physical security guards and all these other things, right? And I think it was Nickerson figured out a way to like jimmy the door open a little bit, and he used some copper wiring or some copper wire to get to the other side. There's like what's called a conductive crash bar. And you touch it, and static electricity causes the crash bar to depress and then open the door. Well, he ran wire long enough to get to this one side and generate enough static electricity with his hand to open the door to get into our building. And then from there, our guards weren't doing anything. They were just like sitting there, like we're like waving at the thing, and like we're like trying to figure out like, hey, we're here, and nothing happened. So it was a good learning lesson for me and how to get better and all that good stuff. But as a chief security officer of a company, there's a lot of things that you learn as far as politics. You have to be friends with people. You have to make friends, even if you don't agree with what they're doing. And there's certain exceptions that you have to do to allow. And what was interesting is that I got very lucky because the CEO of the company, Tom at the time, was extremely awesome at understanding that we had a lot of risks and things that we were doing. So I really enjoyed that. And while I was at Diebold, I started DerbeCon with a bunch of my friends. And DerbeCon was really, the story behind DerbeCon is kind of interesting. We all, Adrian Crenshaw, Iron Geek, he decided that he wanted to hold a little free get-together for folks to learn Metasploit. And so we all went for this whole free day thing of Metasploit to teach people how to use Metasploit and all this other stuff. And we're hoping to get 20 people. And we ended up getting 150 just for this thing. We had nowhere to go, so we had to go to a bigger venue, and it was all free and for the community and all that good stuff. And so after this whole thing happened, Martin Boss, Adrian, myself, another guy named Alex Ka, and a few of my friends, we were all sitting down at a pizzeria, and we're like, hey, we should start a conference here in Kentucky. It'd be awesome. It'd be fun. And so that's kind of how the idea of DerbeCon was born. I remember when we were going through all the finances, I've taken a lot of risks in my life that luckily have worked out, and there's been some that haven't. But like, I literally would have been completely financially crippled if DerbeCon didn't work out. Like, and so I basically like took out a second mortgage on my house at the time because I was still pretty young in my career. And I'm like, we're not trying to make any money off of DerbeCon, though all the money that goes in DerbeCon goes into the next year. But if no one showed up, like basically I would have been really hurting for financials at that point in time. And so the first year we needed 300 people to break even. And so I pulled out all the stops. I called all my friends up. I'm like, listen, hey, can you guys come to this conference and really make it a big thing? Because we want to create more of a family-centric type of conference. And so we started DerbeCon, and we got 1,100 people the first year. And so I obviously did a very good job when it came to that. And so it was really awesome to kind of see. And this is actually me from the first year. A little bit bigger Dave than what I was before in the past. And I think I had a little bit, and actually I didn't really have much more hair there either. But anyways, that was the first year at DerbeCon. And since then, it's kind of neat to kind of see where everything has gone and the people that you change. Of course, Jason in the background, look at the weird stare. But it's been interesting to see how that's kind of grown and kind of come through and the different things that you're able to do with that. Now, one thing I'll say is that the media stuff has been interesting, and I'm going to show a little video here about one that was on CNN recently. But when you go in front of people like DerbeCon, or you go and you talk in front of presentations, or you're talking to a board of directors, they're still people. And you have to remember that you're talking to people that may not understand what you're doing. And so the biggest thing for me that I've learned is that communication piece. So I'm going to show you, this is a thing that we did at CNN. And it's a good segment because it'll show you a little bit, and I'll start talking a little bit about social engineering here in a second, but just a little bit about this one.
What do you think of when I say the word hacker? Some creepy dude in a basement? Well, that's a misconception. What if I told you there's a class of hackers who don't just have social skills, they have more social intelligence than anyone you'll ever meet?
I disagree with that, by the way. I don't have, I did not put that line in there, and I definitely don't have more social intelligence than everybody else out there. So.
David Kennedy is one of them. He's what's known as a social engineer, or a people hacker. His craft is to dupe you into doing things and sharing information you probably shouldn't.
Can I just get your credit card number?
No, it's funny. What's funny about that story, okay, so we're doing this interview for CNN, and Lori is there, and she's like, hey, can you try to hack into my producer, at least just to kind of see how it'll go? I'm like, sure, no problem. So the producer was actually traveling to, I think it was like France at the time. And the reason I was able to see that is he's got a Twitter account. And so looking at his Twitter account, he's like, oh, he's taking pictures in France and all this other stuff. And so I take my phone number up and I spoof my number and I look like I'm coming from, like Chase Fraud Services. And I call him and I say, I'll just call him Bob, right? It's not his real name, but I'll call him Bob. Any Bobs in here? I like picking up Bobs. There we go, got a Bob right there, okay. What I was like, hey, Bob, I just want to let you know this is, James from Credit Card Service or Chase Fraud Services. We've noticed that there's been some weird charges happening, over in Europe. Are you currently in France right now? And you can hear kind of a sigh of relief because I kind of established credibility of knowing where he's at and all that good stuff. He's like, yeah, I'm in France. Everything's fine. I've been buying some things here and stuff like that. No problem. I'm like, okay, great. So if you're in France, I just want to go through a couple of charges here, just to make sure that everything you have is legitimate. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Thank you. And so I started making up some really horrible stuff, like bondage stuff, right? Like German bondage, whatever, and all those other things. And like, did you spend $872 here? No. Did you send it to this nightclub, which is known for this, and blah, blah, blah. And so what I was doing there is I was embarrassing them and putting them into an uncomfortable situation, which, in social engineering terms, there's a few different ways that you can do it. There's negative persuasion, but uncomfortableness or not liking the situation, human beings will try to do whatever they can to quickly rectify that situation so they don't have to deal with it anymore. So I was embarrassing him, and obviously he was in a public place. He's probably there with some people, so he didn't want to repeat. I'm like, so can you repeat what I just said, the name of the place, and that you say is fraudulent so I can get it verified? It's a horrible name, right? And he doesn't feel comfortable with that. And so I start talking. I'm like, okay, well, I just need to verify a couple things. I'm like, first I got your date of birth. Finding somebody's date of birth is super easy. And I'm like, so let me find your date of, and here's your date of birth. Can you give me your social security number? He's like, yep, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, can you give me your full credit card number for the account just so I can verify? Blah, 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 right? And so now I was able to get personal pieces of information from him very quickly, not knowing anything that was happening. So when you heard, can I get your credit card number, that was that.
Use it for illegal activity. In David's case, companies pay him to find out if employees are leaving the company vulnerable. He and his team show us how it's done. Step 1, spoof his number so it looks like he's calling from inside the company, and then call tech support.
Hello, you there? Hello?
Hi, this is Ken. How may I help you?
I was wondering if you can take a look at a website I'm trying to get to. It's for a big customer. It could be a stupid thing. I'm really stuck with computers, but so it's www.survey. That's survey -pro.com.
Yeah, I got a prompt to open. I just clicked open, and I'm at the site now.
Here's what the IT guy doesn't realize. By clicking that link, he's just given David full access to his computer.
Whoa, okay, that's weird. I just hit it and it works. It seems like it's working fine now. Awesome. I don't know what you did, man, but I really appreciate the help.
Hey, no problem. That was easy.
That was it?
We're on his computer right now.
You were able to take over this guy's computer within, I would say, like under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes, yeah. Under 2 minutes, took over his entire computer, and think of it as not just his computer, but it's pretty much a downfall of the entire company.
In this case, the company was paying David.
So what's interesting about this one is, the biggest question I get asked is, well, first of all, how did you write a tool like SET, right? And the truth of the matter is that SET was just derived from starting off very small. I think the first iteration of SET was something that was like a mailer. It would send mails out with like an attached link from Metasploit that had a PDF attached to it, right? That would compromise a computer. And then you start adding a little bit more, right? I added the Java applet attack very quickly after that, and then I added a few other things, and it just started to gradually take hold. And SET wasn't popular at first. It wasn't a tool that anybody knew about, but as I added more and more features and kept, having fun with it, it came out. Now, one of the things that people say is, well, how do you get into social engineering? How's that something you do? And that's just with practice. It's just human nature. And just talking to people and actually understanding how they relate and how you would react to certain situations. A lot of times before I do a social engineering campaign, I'll actually like pretend and with my wife to get some perspective to say, hey, would you believe this or would you fall for this as a person? And so I get some good perspectives from the outside or different folks before I actually go and do something. But in this case, if you're not, when I was calling the help desk, right, I knew that there's certain things that the help desk would challenge me on, right? Like if I ask like, hey, can you reset my password? They're going to challenge me on that. I need to know certain things of information. I need to know like, hey, maybe my last four of my social or an employee ID or something that's I'm not going to probably have right off the bat. And I can do things like probing that to find out what those are ahead of time and hopefully getting that information through like open source intelligence or whatnot. But in this case, I was asking something that was so trivial that it didn't require any type of verification. And so, as being somebody that focuses and communicates to people or talks to people, you have to realize that when you're going into these types of situations. When you're going in and you're doing a physical pen test and you're doing it in the daytime and you're going through normal employees, you just don't need to look suspicious. You can pretty much walk into any building you want to and do whatever you want to. But if you're walking in and you're like, people are gonna be like, what are you doing here, right? Can I see your ID, right? If you walk in, you're part of the process, you're on the phone, especially what I do a lot of times is I'll dress up in like an important suit or whatever, so I look like I'm an executive or something, right? And then I'll be on my cell phone, I'll look like I'm important and like walking through and talking, and so people won't bother you as you're walking through. Just human nature. I mean, do you want to interrupt somebody that's on the phone and say, sir, especially if he's someone of authority based on our culture, hey, sir, can you stop here? Are you supposed to be here? They don't typically do that. So the situations you create are all based on human behavior and everything else. But that's been fun to learn, and DerbeCon was definitely part of that. Now, coming from a chief security officer's role, and I was doing very well in that position, right? I had a great team. I had a lot of success. The program was doing really well. I was the youngest vice president in Diebold history. And I remember going home one day to my wife, and I had just brand new twins at this time. And so I had, at the time, it was probably, 2 maybe, and then I had brand new baby twins, okay? So I had 3 kids. And I go to my wife, after having a great job and everything's wonderful, and I have perfect job security. I don't have to worry about my job or anything else. Everything's perfect in my life, right? And I go to Erin and I sit down at the table. I'm like, hey, I want to leave Diebold and I want to start my own company. And she looks at me and it's just, it's like one of those like perplexed, you're crazy, what's going on, and is he serious, right? Is this April, right? And, what was interesting about that is, when we started talking about it, it's what I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to start my own company. I wanted to, figure out what that meant to do because it was kind of my next journey in life. And I've always been the type of person that trusts my gut. And I know that sounds like a horrible way of making decisions, but if you know it's the right thing for you to do, then why are you holding yourself back and not doing it? And so for me, I was like, I'm happy here. It's great. I don't know what this means to go and run my own business, but I'm going to go and do it and figure it out. And I didn't know if I was going to be successful. I didn't know if I was going to be finding a new job later on. And so I literally left a perfectly great job and made the jump and started my own company. And so the first company was TrustedSec. And it was funny because when I started TrustedSec, I'm like, well, we're a tech company, so we don't need a building, right? And I don't know if you've ever tried to work out of a house where there's 3 kids. It doesn't. After a week, I was like, okay, it sounds like they're killing each other upstairs and they're screaming and all this other stuff, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm on a conference call. I'm like, oh yeah, hang on a second, quiet. Oh yeah. Trying to drum up some work or whatnot. And so I started TrustedSec with the mindset of not having an office. And quickly, I'm like, okay, I need to have an office right now. And so this is the building that we first started, or that I first started in. I was employee number 1, and that was it. And this is my office. This was TrustedSec. This is the building. I was literally in a building, and we didn't have a lot of money, so we're like, okay, we'll just start it, and get the cheapest place possible. And literally, you had to like walk into the back of like this dungeon building. There's no windows on this place at all, and it's like basically in the back, right next to like the furnace heater. And this is where we started our company, where I started my company at. And so, owning or starting a business is interesting because now your sales, your delivery, You're everything that you possibly have to imagine that you need to be. You need to understand like tax codes and starting up LLCs and all of this other stuff that I had no idea how to do, and I had no clue. And so figuring all that out was a process and kind of working through that. But what I found is that if you continue to try to do the right thing, good things happen. And so with TrustedSec, I started trying to drum up work, and I had a lot of friends that started passing me some work and things like that, and I was able to at least start to build up a little bit. And then I made the decision to hire employee number 2. Employee number 2 didn't go so well, all right? But I learned from that experience, right? And since then, it's been going phenomenal. I added employee number 3, and employee number 4, and employee number 5, and employee number 6, and now we're up to 27 people at TrustedSec, and that's within 4 years. And so, TrustedSec was a great learning experience because I've never done anything like this before. I've never started anything. But the thing with TrustedSec is that I've always surrounded myself with friends. Like my head of sales. The reason why he's my head of sales is because my wife and his wife were walking dogs when I lived in an apartment complex when I got out of the military, and we ended up becoming friends, right? Larry, I worked with his wife at Diebold, and I became good friends with Larry. He came aboard. Everybody that is part of TrustedSec has been somebody that I've known for a long period of time. Ben's around here. Ben, I did some work with, but we've been friends ever since then. So, it's one of those things where, culturally, I try to surround myself with just friends and people that I know can do a good job. And that's kind of how I've always modeled TrustedSec. It's completely opposite of what they tell you in business. They tell you in business, never hire friends. I'm the exact opposite. I only hire friends, right? And they tell you in business, hey, you can't, do certain things. Well, I'm the exact opposite. Like, I always get asked, hey, we have a customer coming in, do you want us to dress up? No, this is our culture. We're in jeans and t-shirts or whatever you want to wear. Well, not whatever you want to wear, but you got to specify with our guys sometimes, trust me. But, it's a culture where you can have fun. There's Nerf guns. There's things that you can do. If you decide you don't want to come in and not work, as long as you can get your work done, that's fine. Come in and we have couches that you can lay on and do whatever you want to. It's that type of culture. And so while I started TrustedSec, a lot of things were happening and a lot of things were moving around. And I remember being in New York, and the healthcare.gov stuff got released. And so then I had to go and testify in front of Congress. And that was interesting because Congress was something I never experienced before. And I guess I didn't know what I thought, right? I guess when I went into Congress, it was kind of expecting certain things to be like, hey, regardless of party lines, people would want to make things better, right? And my goal for going and testifying in front of Congress wasn't to point out that healthcare.gov was horrible and that it was a policy issue or anything like that. I don't follow politics. I hate both parties. I don't like any of them, right? So, when I went there, I'm like, listen, I'm concerned about the security of healthcare.gov. I don't think it's secure. I think that's the same for pretty much the entire federal space and the state and local as well. And so, instead, what I was met with was a bunch of people yelling at me and screaming at me and trying to get me thrown out of Congress and saying that I was a bad hacker. And the second time that I testified in front of Congress was really interesting because there was an individual. I won't go into his name. I blocked it on my head. It's like Voldemort. You never say his name ever again. But he started registering fake Twitter accounts and like trying to contact media saying that I hacked into healthcare.gov and I should be thrown in prison and all this other stuff, right? And so I started dealing with that. And if you look at the CFAA, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, it's so vague that if they really wanted to go after me for Googling some stuff, then they probably could. And so at that point in time, I'm like, okay, I tried helping out. I wasn't trying to do anything malicious. I wasn't hacking the site in any way, shape, or form. I was basically, kind of thrown out, trying to throw out of Congress. So I decided never to do Congress ever again or try to help them in any way, shape, or form because of that. Then I went on the Katie Couric show. That is not Photoshop, by the way. So I love that. That's my favorite. If you don't know the story behind that, I think I showed it here once before. But I was on the Katie Couric show, and there's a guy named Benedict Cumberbatch who is the lead actor in Sherlock, as well as he's been in like Star Trek. I think he's Spock in Star Trek and a few other things. Or is he not? Is he Spock in Star Trek? What's that? Khan, that's right. It's Khan, that's right. Thank you. And so he was coming up afterwards in the Katie Couric show. And so they had they had Up Next, one of the world's sexiest men alive, but they removed the Up Next for like a half a second, okay? And so of course all my hacker buddies were like, hey, look at this, and they photo, And it's perfect because that look is just priceless. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's right. It's good stuff. So, this was interesting because the Katie Couric show was one of those ones where I really felt that it resonated with people. And has everybody here seen that before? Has anybody not seen this, the Katie Couric interview? We've only got a couple. I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. But I literally hacked somebody live on TV, which was really neat. And it kind of resonated because it showed what hackers could do, and it was kind of a cool thing within that. And what was interesting with TrustedSec, to go back to real quick, when I started TrustedSec, I had a plan, which is really weird for me because I don't usually plan things out. But I wanted to start a defensive company too, because I figured, hey, I'm good at hacking, maybe I can help on the defensive side as well. And so I knew that building something like an MSSP or a 24/7 SOC or things like that required a lot of investment and a lot of money, and I didn't want to go the venture capital route. And that's one thing that I will say, that this industry is really messed up in a lot of ways, okay? There's a lot of things happening out there where there's money being thrown out. I think there's something like was it 376 startups a month in security around venture capitalists just putting money to see what sticks. And so you have a lot of these companies now that the route that you go to is the Silicon Valley route, which is like, hey, I have an idea, and in order for me to make this idea, I need to go get funding. And then people give you money for your idea, and you can hire developers, and you can go make all this stuff. And then you get what's called Series A, B, C, whatever funding, and to get different pieces of money coming in so that hopefully you can become a profitable company. But what you do is you lose control over that company the first time you do that. What your idea is no longer relevant. What you're trying to do is no longer relevant. What you're trying to accomplish is no longer relevant. You're now at even if it's a minority ownership in that, you now have board of directors to deal with and all this other stuff. And so I did the exact opposite. I didn't want any money from anybody. I wanted to start off from the bare bones, from the ground up, and hey, if I failed, that's great. Then I can go hopefully find a job somewhere else. And so with TrustedSec, I always knew that I was going to create another company, BDS. And so about 3 years into TrustedSec, I started Binary Defense Systems. And I started that from the mindset of trying to develop things and make things better and to try to be more defensive with different things that are happening out there. And so it was one of those things that I've been really happy with. And now we're working, we have a whole development team. We have, I think BDS is larger than TrustedSec now, which is it's crazy because it's only been up for 2 years. And so, it's one of those things where, you can make a difference, you can build it out, and you can do it yourself, coming from nothing. So for me, I don't know what's to come. I'm going to continue to move forward with BDS and TrustSec. I'm not starting another company ever again. I'm done with that. I don't have enough hair left, literally, to go through what it means to actually start a company. Like, listen, when you start a company, you're dealing with everything. You're the HR, you're everything that happens. You're the PR, you're the marketing, you are everything. And so, you work a ton of hours, and you try to make things right, for your employees to make sure that they're happy and that they like what they do and all this other stuff. And so what's to come? Probably just continuing to move with TrustedSec and BDS, and working on some cool stuff with that. I have a really big thing that we're working on that I've been working on for the past 2 years that hopefully is coming on the next month. One thing I can say is that I definitely couldn't have done it without the family. This was 2 weeks ago, and it was my first vacation that I'd ever taken since starting TrustedSec. So, much needed vacation. So I came back feeling very good, but I definitely couldn't have did it without my family. What you can do, personally, is that, for me, it was about finding what I wanted to do and what I like to do. And that's the biggest thing for me. Like, when I go into work, I don't want to hate work. We spend so much time at work. We spend 60% of our lives just sitting there at work doing something. And then we go home to unwind, right? I think it should be the exact opposite. I mean, not exact opposite, but I think they should be very complementary of each other. When you go to work, you should enjoy going to work. You should have fun going to work. So make your work what you want it to be. That's the biggest thing. And the way that you do that is you find what you want to do in this industry, and you home in on that, and you research the heck out of it, and you get to be good at that. It doesn't mean I'm good. I mean, there's way more smarter people, especially in this room, than I am. But I found something that I like to do, and I just homed in, and I started learning. I remember when I was doing exploit research, when I started getting into the exploit stuff, right, and doing like basic buffer overflows. I remember that there was this new concept, and I think at the time it wasn't even called ROP gadgets, but it was ROP, return-oriented programming. And I didn't understand how it worked. I had no idea how it worked. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I remember sitting there for 3 weeks just trying to figure things out. I'm literally on the couch, frustrated and upset and mad because I can't figure out how this exploit works. And one day, I got it to work. And that persistence and that feeling that you get after you've done something hard, people in this industry aren't smarter than one another. We are just good at what we do because we have enough persistence to get over that. And so if you want to learn exploits, you can do it. Absolutely. It doesn't mean that you need to be a brilliant mathematician or anything else that's out there. You can do it just by giving enough persistence at what you're learning. It doesn't mean that that person that's done it before you use any smarter or better or anything else. It just means that you enjoy what you do and you have fun with it. And so for me, going into work, it's got to be fun. When I go into work, it's like, hey, you know, how's things going, and having a good time, and I leave work excited, and I leave work when I want to, at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock. It doesn't matter. But you have to make what you want to be successful, and you have to make what you want to be happy. Some CCDC tips. That's the end of that part, by the way. But some CCDC tips real quick. I'm going to give you folks anybody here actually on the blue team? We're coming for you, by the way. Yeah. This one group policy, I'm going to give you this one. Put that in place the first thing you do. All right? Remove the entire administrators group from being able to do this. It's going to make our lives hell. All right? Got that? Everybody taking pictures? That one group policy right here will make our lives hell. Okay? If you really want to mess with us, throw some scheduled tasks and spray hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these around the place. That'll make our lives fun. Now, one thing that you folks typically don't do, which you should, but is put antivirus on stuff, right? Because antivirus is very heavy. One of the fast things you can throw on there, which is I think a 20 meg file, is Emmet. Put it in its max security mode, download it, it's Microsoft based, download it, just use the recommended settings, put it in max mode, make sure dep ASLR and everything else is out, and then up it, okay? That'll make it a little bit harder for us to get things like MS0867 to actually go and run. And put it on all your processes, by the way. Don't just do like the ones. Like right click and put it on every process. Put it on things and I guess the positivity of things. There's 2 great books that I recommend. The first one's called Originals. And this is a relatively new book, and it's basically a study of folks that have been successful in business or have changed the world for the better, okay? And they interview these folks like Steve Jobs and other people in different areas, and they look at what it took for them to change, you know, the culture or change, you know, what was considered normal and go a different route. And what was interesting is that there's certain people that were very good and successful, but they had so many catastrophic failures. Like Steve Jobs is a great example of a lot of catastrophic failures. Especially even as he was super successful in Apple, you get a certain type of, I guess, prowess that you're a very good business person, right? But Steve Jobs was very good at technology. He wasn't very good at everything else. And so there was a person that was trying to get some advice from Steve Jobs about a new medical breakthrough that was coming on. This medical breakthrough, Steve Jobs said, was going to revolutionize the medical field, and it was going to be the biggest company in the world within 5 years, and all of these other things, right? And Steve Jobs was going to give him like $100 million for 10% of the company when it was just a concept. And what was interesting is that last year, this medical company was the biggest tech flop in our century, right? It bombed out. It didn't have any change. It didn't work. All these other things, and so Steve Jobs wasn't very right on that one. And the reason is because Steve thought he was good at business. He understood other areas of expertise, and he didn't understand the medical field. And those are different things that you have to focus on too, is that, hey, you might be very good at certain things. Focus on what you're good at and kind of home in on there. This is a great book of kind of the success and just taking a positive influence. If you, one of the ones I think was in here as well was Elon Musk from Tesla and SpaceX and everything else. One of the things that was interesting with him is that he wakes up every morning with a positive outlook. Positive outlook on life, right? If things are going to be fine, things are going to be great. If I don't know if you saw one of his rocket ships that he built, you know, they were trying to get reusable rockets, and so it shot up and it did its thing, everything, and it's trying to land itself on a platform, and it was going to land, and it was landing, and then it landed itself, which is a huge accomplishment. But then it fell over, and then it exploded and blew up everything, right? Obviously, hundreds of millions of dollars lost, and all this other stuff. And you know what did Elon say? Hey, it stood up longer than the last one, right? So having a positive outlook on things is also something that's super important to me. And one of the things that you can see time and time again is that people that are negative, if you surround yourself with negative people, you in turn will also become negative. So if you're in an environment that's hostile, that's negative, you will be a negative person as well. And it's not good for you health-wise to go and do that. So when you wake up, be positive, be happy. Another good statistic is that what they did is they did a study on people that wake up and check their cell phones first thing in the morning. If you read an email that sets you off in the morning, like something that bad happened, it'll actually ruin your day for the rest of your whole day. So take your email and don't read it until you get into work or other things as well. So those are some key concepts. Another one of my favorite books out there, Chris Nickerson actually recommended this one to me. It's called Rework. And it's a really good book because it's basically the exact opposite of what we're taught in business. It's like, hey, you should only have meetings when you absolutely need to have meetings. And they should only be like 10-minute meetings with the people that you really need to get the decisions done. And they should be standing meetings only because people don't want to sit there and talk the whole time, right? It's the exact opposite of the hour-long meetings that you have to rehash things. And it's a meeting for a meeting about a meeting to pontificate about another meeting that you're going to have. So, Rework is a really good book in my opinion. The chapters were perfect for me because each chapter is like 3 pages long. And so it goes to one topic, to another topic, to another topic, and it works very, very good with me. But it's the exact opposite of what we should be thinking and how we should be doing things in a good way. So I really recommend this as a book. Has anybody here read Rework before? Got a couple. Great book. And last but not least, positivity, right? I don't know if you saw there was a video of somebody just going to I think it was a Trump rally and a Bernie Sanders rally and just giving out hugs. And everybody accepted the hugs. And it was one of those things that, people were laughing and smiling and having a good time with. Changing culture, it doesn't need to be about a hug. If you don't like a hug, that's fine. But, but making people around you positive and working with people and changing people for the better is what it's all about. Because at the end of the day, we're only on this earth for a small period of time. And so if you can make those changes for people and you can kind of hand over the next generation to a certain way, that's a good thing. You made a big impact on the community itself. So, for me, it's always been about the positivity of the industry, and DerbeCon is a good, reason for that as well. So that's all I got. Anybody have any questions? Anytime a hug, free hugs, anytime. The first what? Yeah. Yeah, so interesting enough, good question. So what was the lessons I learned from the second employee? So what happened, and just to give a perspective, TrustedSec has been in business for 5 years, okay? And in those 5 years, we've had 2 people leave. One was for personal reasons, and we're still great buddies. The other one had a greater opportunity. And that's one thing that I always tell my employees, listen, if you ever want to go, let me know and I will find you a better job. It's just one of those things where I try to help people in every way, shape, or form. So we've only had 2 people ever leave the company. When it comes to the one individual there, it was a personality problem, and more so, and I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but the person was going through a lot at the time, and it wasn't good for either one of us. And one thing that I did is I didn't hire a friend. It was somebody that I really didn't know, and somebody that was kind of newer in the industry type of thing, and that's fine, that's great. Just the habits of not actually doing work or saying when you do something and not doing things, it didn't work out, unfortunately, during that time. That's the only person I've ever actually had to fire in my history, which is horrible. But yeah, good question. I don't know. I don't like firing people. We put them in different capacities. I don't like firing people. I like putting them in capacities where they can be successful. So, if someone isn't working out, then I try to move them to a different place that they can be successful to work and be happy. Because, it's not good for either anybody if they're not happy. So, any other questions? Nothing else? All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.